All right. Well, Yuxi, thank you for joining us. I'm super excited to have you here and to chat a little bit around your Acts of Confidence program experience. I guess to
Yep.
start with, what would be great is if you could just tell our listeners a little bit around your background and what brought you to, or what inspired you to kind of lean into the program.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a manager at Macquarie, working in the risk culture space. And what drew me to the program, I think number one was finding that essentially a mastermind of other females, young professionals. I've been to a couple of your networking sessions, Kate. So I just found, having that connected group and then facilitated sessions was what I was really looking forward to. And especially something that would be consistent, something that would hold me accountable. And that's what I came to you for.
And why particularly confidence? What about, like, from your personal
Yeah.
perspective? I know you are quite confident. Others, I imagine, look at you, say you're our classic client who would say, others look at me and say that I sound and you look confident. So what for you was going on that you went, oh, I want to dig in a bit deeper on this subject?
Yeah, 100%. That's a really good question. And that is absolutely what I get. I think for me, internally, it was that in my role, I was stepping into a lot of new areas. So outside of what I would call my comfort zone. So new projects, new managers, new stakeholders. And, a lot of that at the time for me was a little bit daunting because it's, a bit outside of your comfort zone, so you don't know how you're going to handle it. So confidence really was the thing that we oftentimes rely on. And actually what happens, at least from a female perspective and from my own career's perspective, is sometimes you just need someone to tell you, actually, you've got it. So for me, it was a bit of a reminder. It was a bit of I know I've done certain things before, and I know that if I bring the confidence into it, I'll be able to progress things forward. So yeah, that was my main reason.
Cool. And talk to us a little bit around, this concept of the act of confidence comes before the feeling of confidence, and I guess how that impacted decisions, actions you were making over the course of the program and then beyond.
Yeah, I love that question because the act of confidence is what stood out for me the most over that course of the program. So it's confidence is this thing that we always say we're supposed to have. Once you're confident, you can do anything, right? But it's interesting because what I came to realize, that feeling is really fleeting. It's kind of like motivation. Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. And what's more important is really just taking the action. So the act of confidence, that was really pretty much my main takeaway, which is just go out there and do it, and you'll actually figure things along the way, right? And you know that you've got that in you. So what I did, and maybe I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, but what I did basically over the course of that 10-week program, as I mentioned, I was kind of actually facing a lot of new things. One of the things that I made sure to do, again, from that accountability perspective, was to actually think, well, what is that act of confidence going to be for this week? And it doesn't always need to be the biggest thing ever, but it just needs to be something that I could, at the end of the week, walk away with as, well, that was the outcome. And look what action actually does. It expands new opportunities. It connects you to new people, getting outside of your comfort zone. Again, as I mentioned, that was one of the things that I was looking for in the program. And sometimes it is to, even have a group that kind of kicks you up the butt a little bit. Am I allowed to say that?
Totally.
Totally. That kicks you up the butt a little bit. So for me, that was just really, really helpful. And I mean, at work, we always do have, managers, we've got deliverables, all of that kind of stuff. And there is that, but that's very much focused on, execution, whereas sometimes it's execution plus the feeling, and you want to bring those two together.
And so you mentioned, small acts of confidence in the program. Each week we talk about that. I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here.
Yeah.
Have you got some examples of what those look like? Because I think one of the things we always talk about is it's amazing when you do something small and you get feedback, what impact that has on future decisions, future actions. So can you give some examples of just one or two of those small acts of confidence that maybe had a big impact for you?
Absolutely. I think it's funny because when I look back, there are actually so many of those moments, because it was kind of always running in the back of my head, what could I do if I felt like my most confident self, if I felt like there was nothing holding me back, or, that little voice that's in the back of your head, right? So for me, I mean, I was on a project with a pretty complex project, large scale, had a team as well. And a lot of it was around, for me personally during that time, was around engaging with stakeholders differently, right? So in my role, we're expected to be the subject matter expert. So talking confidently to a subject is critical. And so for me, it was actually being proactive with some stakeholders, setting up that meeting before they even ask for it, and actually being the one to kind of drive that relationship. And that kind of all snowballed, because now that I'm actually coming to the end of that project, what I found is by doing those little acts of confidence, sending that email invitation to have a discussion, right? It doesn't seem daunting when you look back on it now, but in the moment, it's kind of like, oh, is this, you've got all these like questions.
Well, it's the whole thing of, is it my job to lead? Is it like, should I be doing this, or should I be waiting to follow? Yeah. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. And the outcome now, because of all those little actions, all the discussions that have happened along the way, is actually now better business outcomes, because we've actually found, synergies, we found areas to collaborate. And I mean, none of that would have happened if I didn't send that invitation at the beginning, right? It started with an email and then a call, and it's the little things. It really is.
And I know you mentioned that you've gotten feedback from other people who have kind of comments have kind of said, hey, you're doing things differently. Can you tell us a little bit around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, I think, again, coming back to that internalized feeling, and as you said at the beginning, people would say that I'm quite confident from a presentation perspective, communications. One of the things that I felt for me, why I think some of that commentary came back was just because I showed up differently. So rather than, coming to a team meeting thinking, oh, should I say this, or should I wait? Should I follow? It was actually, well, let me drive this. It was, I'm here, I've shown up, I've pulled these people together in the meeting. Why don't I actually kick off the conversation? And why don't I actually, be the one that leads, really. That's what it is, right? Having the confidence to lead, having the confidence to step up, to speak up, to show up, really. So I think that's where the commentary came from. And it's not to say that I didn't do that before, but I'd say, perhaps it was not as intentional. Whereas with that voice, not the voice of anxiety or doubt or anything, but the voice of confidence in my head, it was actually, well, why not me, rather than why me?
Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about that voice now, because what we know is the more actions you take, the more that, this feeling of confidence starts to grow. And what we know through clients that we work with for a long time is all of a sudden they just start to feel different, right? They walk up, they show up in a room, they don't question themselves as much. There's not as much self-talk, there's not as much comparison, that all of those, what is habitual behavior, starts to just quieten down a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Those sort of like unconscious or subconscious things. I would say for me, and my background as well in personal training from many years ago as well, is that it's a muscle. So the more that I was actually giving to it, taking those actions, really building it and strengthening it over time. Now, I mean, sometimes they do still pop up, those questions of, oh, should I do this, or, should I wait? But the awareness is number one. So when that comes up, I kind of click and think, no, actually, let's just shut that thought, let's push it to the side, because, well, actually there's more things to do here, and actually action is going to be the thing that drives, because it's already proven, right? So safe to say that voice has definitely taken up a much smaller space, I would say.
Yeah, and what a gift. We've done this program with women who are in their mid-30s, mid-40s, you're kind of late 20s. Actually, what a gift to achieve that, right? In your late 20s, rather than have to navigate that and deal with all the space that it takes up, and the emotion, really.
I'd love it if it was early 20s, Kate. don't give away too much of my age, but I just think it takes a weight off your shoulders, because before you'd be thinking, or those moments where you walk into a room and you're like, people are looking at me, people are wondering. To be honest, nobody is. And I think having that real, or nobody knows what they're doing all the time, it's pretty comforting, to be honest. So yeah.
Cool. And so when you think about kind of going forward now, if you think about the next 12 months in your career, what, if you were to have a glass ball, what kind of impact do you feel? I mean, you've noticed the difference over the course of the last 3 months. We know the shifts are really significant and that they continue to come, and because exactly like you said, it's this muscle, right? And the more we build the muscle, the more that, we'll take those acts of confidence, the feedback will come, and we'll keep shaping more and more acts of confidence. So just keen to get a sense from your perspective on, as you look ahead, what do you think will be different?
Yeah, I think for me, there's still, in my role at the moment, I'm always being exposed to new things. It's challenging, and I think for me personally, what that's going to look like is to continue to step into those, to actually sometimes even like leap into those, right? Because now that I've built it up, it's that muscle has been strengthened, and now we're going to go further. And what it means, because I've just taken away so much from it, what it means for my team directly and my direct reports is actually sharing some of that with them. I know you've done a lot of work with Brene Brown and vulnerability. So I think for me as well, just passing it on, because I wish I knew this when I was in my early 20s, right? So if I'm working with some more junior staff or, junior team members who maybe, or even members that are just new to the role, new to the organization, it's actually passing along some of those things. And by all accounts, I always feel like it's about role modeling it. So sometimes you're not going to get it right, as confident as you are, right? But it's actually owning up to it and knowing, well, I'll just figure out a way after.
Very cool. And to anyone who's thinking about kind of stepping into this work, what would you say?
I would say jump into it, leap into it, because honestly, when you've done it, when you've done the hard work, when you look back, you just sort of think, why did I used to think like that, right? So I wouldn't even hesitate, right?
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your journey with us. It's been a delight to watch. And as always, some of our most exciting pieces is what's to come for you. So we look forward to witnessing that over the coming.
Yeah. Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.